Heading down to Indiana for old-fashioned deer bow camp. We're gonna sleep in Josh's garage. We were driving side by side with Ricky Poo, but he's going kind of slow today. And State Patrol pulled him over a little ways back. Probably because his plates have been expired for 2 years. But he'll get there when he gets there. But we're on our way. We got Eric behind the camera there. Say hey, Eric.
Hey, everybody. Cruising down 94 right now.
We're going through God's land, Chicago.
God's country.
Yeah.
4 hours here we have left. So
yeah, there's going to be some other guys in camp. Josh ain't hunting because he's tagged out, but 2 of his friends from Wisconsin are going to be there too. So we're going to have 4 guys pounding the public hills and see what we can get into.
what are your expectations for the week then?
Same as every trip. I'm going to shoot a booner on day 1 and actually find it, and then we're going to pack up and head home and shoot the booner at home, right?
Yeah.
You got to have belief in what you're doing, and then when it fails, you just go out and do it again, right?
Got to stay optimistic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But it's a good area. I mean, we should get on some deer. I don't think there's as many deer as what we're into in Wisconsin, but there's big deer for sure, and we should be able to get on them.
I'm really looking forward to it. I've never hunted Indiana. I have hunted Kentucky, so I'm not sure exactly what to expect terrain-wise. But we'll get into it and put boots on the ground and see what we can find, I guess.
Yeah, let's do it.
Should be fun.
We should probably get down there probably like middle of the day, maybe even a little afternoon. So kind of gonna have to just jump in and attack something, because I still gotta buy a license when we get there, but I want to hunt today.
Yeah.
I want to lose a day.
Right. I mean, we're right in the middle of a rut here, so
Yeah.
we're bound to see something moving.
Yeah, if I didn't think I was going to make any time to hunt, I would have hunted this morning in Wisconsin and then went.
Sure.
Yep.
So, what's the game plan getting into this property?
Well, I think what we're going to do first is we're going to go to a property I'm familiar with. I know there's 2 real good spots on there. It's a long walk, over a mile to both spots. But with the time restraints we have of just getting up here, and I had a hard time getting a license. They have no sense of humor about serial killers. But anyways, I got a license now. We're going out, and we're going to go to 2 spots that I've hunted before, and I'm hoping nobody's been in there. But where they're at, I doubt anybody has. One of them's really overlooked, and one of them's really, really far back. But they're really good spots, but I kind of burnt them up before I found them last year. And we're going to go give those a try right off the bat. And then tomorrow we'll have a little more time to do some scouting. What do you think about that?
I think that sounds like a good plan. Tonight is Halloween.
Yeah, I always have good Halloween nights.
Halloween is usually awesome.
I don't want this to be the first year I have a Halloween night where I don't see a buck.
Mm-hmm. Dan and I are making our way up this trail system here, and we're just starting to see our first amount of fresh sign.
How far back are we?
We're probably, I want to say at this point, we're probably half a mile, 3/4 of a mile.
Yeah, something like
it's
that.
It's just starting to pick up now.
Yeah, it would be discouraging for somebody else to come back this far and not see a thing to hear.
Right. Yep. So this is good to see, but we have a rub here that's pretty low, so it looks to be a smaller deer, but and actually you noticed this one, Dan, but in the back there there's true deer.
Feel it as a tacky?
That looks to be a little better.
That's at least, this is a different deer. It's up higher. That looks at least a 2.5.
It's hard to tell. It's
You know, the one behind you looks pretty tacky. One right behind you.
yeah. Yep.
That one looks like a week or 2 ago.
Just rained
Check that one once.
today too.
That one looks fresh. It's got that gleam to it. No, it's a little bit older, right?
Yeah, you can kind of see some of the
Still look how high it is.
shade in here, but
Yeah.
I'd say that's within the last 3-4 days for sure.
I think so.
But
So that's coming right out of that stuff we want to hunt over there. Right up in those saddles up there is where I'm thinking. And then there's another spot back here. Well, let's go get at it, right?
yeah,
You getting excited now?
I'm pretty excited. The adrenaline is I heard pumping.
What do you think about the sign? I mean, next to Wisconsin, there's hardly any.
It's
I mean, we walked a long
boy, I
ways
could
before
tell
we even
you,
saw
I'd be
anything.
surprised there was a deer in here if I never walked this property before.
Right.
Or if you had not been in here before.
Right.
I mean, I didn't see a deer trail coming in. Now, granted, a lot of leaves are falling, and I know some of the trails are getting covered up by leaves, but you can still kind of make out how they're kind of using the terrain, and I really haven't seen anything until now, so.
Yep. So we got those rubs here. There's probably like 5 or 6 of them. And if we looked a little harder, there's probably more, but we got a rub line coming through here like this, back and forth. And one thing I wanted to note was your average guy would probably set up right in here. He's got a nice open shooting and stuff, and he'd probably make a setup right here. Obviously, there's been a lot of deer sign. But if you look at this, where are they bedding? I mean, way up in those ridges and way back in, you know, behind you in those ridges is where they're coming from. And they're connected in the middle. You know, you get rut, you might get one to cruise through here, but it would be much more advantageous to get up where they're coming from, where all the trails come together. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to get up into those ridges where the saddles are and stuff, where this trail and several others that come out of there all meet, instead of just the one trail, the one finger coming off of it. So we'll
Yeah.
see. So we didn't get, what, about 50 yards up? And I see another big rub, and I spy something that looks really big up there. And again, it's coming right out of those saddles and stuff that I was looking at on the map. I think up there is going to be really good. Check this out. This one, and that's a pretty good sized rub. But I see something on that tree over here. Maybe not. It's not a rub.
Okay.
I have my hopes up there. That's a pretty big diameter and pretty high.
Yeah.
But still, we got them coming out of that stuff. I mean, we should start beelining the back. As the sun comes out, they might want to come out and work their scrapes. It's been raining all day.
What do you see, Dan? That looks like some pretty big sign, eh?
That's pretty aggressive. What I do notice too is that one in the back over there and that one in the back over there are sappy. You can see it. See the green on them? These are happening right now.
And I think this one's definitely from the same buck, but you can tell that that's a little older.
Yeah, he's been working them. You know, it would have been real easy for me to like come back here and stage hunt back, and for me to hunt this and then hunt the other thing. But us coming in here as a team, for you to hunt this bottom and me to hunt the top, if this works out and that spots are still the same way that they looked last year, we catch this buck by total surprise. He doesn't come through, scent us in one spot.
Right.
You know, I think tonight's the night. We need to do it. Let's do it. Spike just ran out. It was bedded right here. Is that it was walking right here? It's right there now. You see him? I just walked about 1.5 miles to get back to this ridge saddle, where this ridge here connects all those ridges and points over there and ridges and points over there to all those ridges and points over there and ridges and points over there. And last year when I walked in here, there was scrape lines and rubs and all kinds of sign. Now I walk in here and it's a ghost town. Now I did see rubs all the way across this valley over here on the next ridge over, coming down into here. Now I think they're dropping off this backside here because there's no sign over here, and dropping into that river bottom. And I'm going to go to where all those rubs we were seeing pinnacle down into a point I saw on the map. But I got to race now because I burned a lot of time walking this far. It ain't easy being beastie. Literally where I got to walk to is probably only about 800 or 900 yards. But I got to walk in a huge circle around it not to kick the deer out. At least I'll be closer to the truck on the way out. I got to where I wanted to hunt, where I hunted last year, where I went in there and found all that sign. There's a ridge over there that connects a whole bunch of ridges and bedding points over here to a whole bunch of ridges and bedding points over there. And last year that was just tore up with sign. This year I got in there and there ain't a sign of a deer. There's a rub, there's a scrape. There, I couldn't cut a track. And there's uneaten acorns all over the ground. So when we came in here, we came up a ridge back here. And there was a lot of rubs coming through this way, and I figured they were going through that funnel. They're not. On the way to that funnel, which is more than 1.5 miles from the road, I did go through this saddle, and I noticed a lot of rubs here, but they're older, like a week old, 2 weeks old. I don't know. I set up over the top of it, but I was going to try and make it back around. I've got the feeling that between this ridge system and the other ridge system where we saw the tracks going across, that those deer are in between us, which would put them right in here someplace, and then dropping down and going up. And that's where the rubs are coming up on the other side. I was going to try and make it around. I just can't. I don't have enough time. So I got to this saddle and I checked my time and I'm like, I can't make it. So I set up right here. I mean, it doesn't look horrible, but I'd really like to see what's going on down on that other side of that thick, up on that hillside a little bit. Thermals are going to be kind of a pain, but I saw a spot on the map where some ditches and stuff come together, and it's got to funnel a lot of the deer right through there. There's a little bit of a flat. I might be able to play some wind down there, but if I get a chance, I'm going to go down and check that out tomorrow, maybe a different day. But there's a lot of big sign on that side. They got to be coming from somewhere. That might be the area. The good part is from right here, I might be able to hear them if they're down there. It's not very far away.
All right, I'm set up for my first evening hunt in Indiana. Tonight is Halloween night, so rut is just starting to kick in here. Should have some deer moving. Pretty warm today, but we'll see what happens in the next couple hours here. I'm set up on a ridge top that carries 4 different points, fingers that come off of a main ridge system. That's likely the whole bedding. The main ridge I'm sitting on, there's a deer trail that runs right along the top of this ridge, and the top of this ridge connects 3 separate fingers that come off over this way. Those fingers are off of the north side of this ridge. Today we have a south wind, so all those fingers would be leeward side of this main ridge, and that south wind is coming over this main spine and down those points and blowing in right from behind the buck. And then they're monitoring a big valley down below this way. But I have a point in here, 3 of them up here, and I didn't even pay too close of attention, but I think there's 1 or 2 points off this way, but that wouldn't be leeward side for today, so but this spot on the ridge right here, I'm shooting right at this trail, coming right up the spine of the ridge. And I'm shooting down to where my thermal should be dropping. There are some historical rubs coming through here. So it definitely says that any bucks bedded out on these fingers are kind of, you know, using the side of the hill here. I do have a steep drop off straight in front of me. Like a pretty deep hollow or ravine. And those deer are typically not going to drop down right into there. They're going to circle around that. So that should keep them a little higher off of this spine to where I should be able to get a shot down here. We just had a rainstorm come through. I'm hoping that it gets the bucks up to go on refresher scrapes, just gets them active a little bit, and get up and start moving. It is the 31st, so anything can happen. There's no place like sitting in the woods on a hunt out of state with friends. So I better shut her down and be quiet, but crossing fingers.
So, didn't see nothing last night. Eric didn't see nothing last night. We just sat in the rain and got soaked. So today we're out looking for leads. We glassed some fields and stuff at dawn. Checked some properties to see what was going on. Went over by old familiar Charlie Swamp, drove around that. Looked at some of our old haunts there from a couple of years ago. And now we're going to actually get out and do some foot scouting. Now it's late enough that we're not going to be spooking the deer so bad. And we're going to go up in the hills, check some stuff up there, and try real hard to get on something this morning. I didn't want to just jump in a tree this morning because the spots we were in, I had like, maybe we'll kill one here, maybe not, probably not, but we'd lose a whole morning. And if we get a good morning into scouting and we get most of the day scouting, I think we'll get on something better for tonight and tomorrow morning. So that's the plan. Long ways down there.
What do you think would happen, Dan, if we went off the side of the hill here?
We die. Story over. End of video. Josh should have a good video.
We're pretty well up here.
Yeah.
Josh said this
We're
was
scouting Charlie Swamp. I was in here 2 years ago. I remember a good spot up in this corner. I remember some point coming off and some good bedding over here. And when we first found it, we had kind of gone through the bedding and screwed it up and it didn't work out. If it's hot now, I'm hoping that if we could just come in along this private land border and get back to that point, that maybe we can get in there without spooking all the deer that are over here. We're sneaking in, following this little drainage so that we stay low, keep our sound low. And I'm hoping the deer are over for there. We could kick some deer in here, though it's pretty thick. But we're going to try and get back there and see what's going on back there. 2 years ago I got into this area here and it was just loaded with sign, and there was really good bucks bedding over here, and this is like a funnel they had to go through to get in and out of there towards crops and stuff over here. And now you get in there and there ain't no sign. And that's the big difference between this and Wisconsin. Where I'm from, there's enough bucks that you kill one or whatever, the next year there's more coming in there using that same terrain feature. And here the numbers are a little lower. You kind of have to spot check these spots to see if there's a buck in there using it. No buck. on to the next spot.
So we abandoned Charlie Swamp altogether. I wasn't finding a good sign here. I wasn't happy with what I was seeing. And we decided to actually just run halfway across the state and go to a different spot that I was at last year during the challenge, where I found a good draw, saw a 10-pointer, and had a lot of buck sign, and it's just something pulling me back to that spot. I really like that spot. The wind's a little funky from there. Last time I circled around a spot on a north wind, but I think I could come in on an east wind and check it out. But it limits, there was like 2 spots if it was a north wind. That limits to 1, but there's another good spot across the street. There's another one up the street. So I mean, if this looks good, we'll probably spend the rest of our time up in this area. I really feel confident about this area. I mean, we were looking at the maps and stuff, and from what I remember, there's a lot of deer in that area. We saw a lot of bucks when I was up there. So I'm excited about going there.
I look forward to getting over there. You know what we just saw for sign today where we were at, there really wasn't anything going on.
Yeah, we're struggling.
We didn't see any fresh sign. I think we saw a scrape today is what we saw. And that's just kind of hard to sit over when you don't feel any confidence in your sit. So
I mean, we could sit based on terrain and hope, but I would rather have a little bit of fresh sign to tell me there's something there.
right.
Okay, we're just getting here now. There's a really good trail coming across here, and then crossing the river on the other side.
Right here. There's just a heavy beat down trail crossing this creek. The field looks cut right now, but that doesn't mean they aren't working up to, the corn up this way.
But that's coming right out of the draw that I want to hunt. And the only thing a little scary about is the people around here. Check out this sign here. The sign is on the public land. Kill Putin! Kill Putin! That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Something just moved in the water down there.
Beaver.
I went to the back of the property, and I have never been back this far. I scouted this last year, but I never got back this far. The one spot I liked when we got there wasn't a lot of sign coming out of that draw where the 10-pointer was last year. So we went up onto a flat where I remembered some sign of deer coming out of the draws and stuff cruising. And there were some good trails there and a couple rubs and stuff. But it looked fairly well used. So Eric hunted that. He's over there, kind of where all those trails come together. And I wandered into the back here, went over the ridge, and I'm up against the neighbor's property with corn in the back. And this corn is standing where the corn over there is cut. And I found several trails on this ridge line, about halfway up the ridge. It's a short ridge, sort of kind of where the thermals blow over. And there's good doe bedding at the top, I believe. It's really thick up there, all briars and stuff. So I would imagine does bed up there, drop to the corn, and that these trails are bucks cruising for those does. Now there's a lack of rubs, but there's a lot of historical ones. Maybe if you come back in a week, it'll be full of rubs. I don't know. But the trails are here. I know there's some bucks in the property. I found some good rubs on the other side. I would have to think any decent buck around here is cruising through here. And I'm going to set up based on the terrain, knowing something's back here. And hopefully it comes down one of these trails. So they're hard to see from up here, but walking in here, there was a trail that went along the ridge here, dropped along that rock, and went down. There's trails that come along here, go up there. There's a trail that comes right through here. And from up here, it looks like there's a trail right there too, but I didn't walk down there. So, I don't know what's up that way, but it looks real thick. So, we'll see what happens.
It's coming down to the last hour here. And getting pretty quiet. I just had a deer coming in. It was dropping straight off the hill in front of me. Off this way. And I reached to start the camera and get it rolling. And I think it saw my arm moving a little bit and it just spooked. Certainly didn't scent me or anything like that. I just heard it take a few hops and I saw its tail and it was gone. So there's deer in the area. We just have to sit tight now.
Last night, Dan and I made a last-minute scramble over to a second piece of property that Dan was interested in taking a look at. And about half hour before close, I had a deer dropping down the hill in front of me. I reached over to start the camera, and it kind of spooked. Took 2 hops up the hill and was gone. I just saw a tail and a rear end. Couldn't make out what it was. And then closing time came and I got down my stand and ended up sitting on a little flat bench just kind of waiting for Dan. And I heard something coming my way. I kind of envisioned that it would be Dan, but I didn't see any light coming over the hill, so I kind of knew at that point it was a deer. Then I heard some trotting coming down the hill right at me. I didn't want to turn my headlamp on because I didn't want to spook it, and it was a pretty cool experience because this deer came trotting down the hill almost right on top of me, 10 feet away from me, and it stopped, and it didn't realize I was there. At this point, I tried to turn my headlamp on, but I had it on upside down, so I was hitting the wrong button. I wasn't hitting the power button. You know, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I didn't spook him too much. He didn't really notice me until last second. I can't tell you if he scented me or just sensed that I was there. But what I could make out was I saw just a little white glow on top of his head that resembled, you know, a rack, resembled antlers. I don't know what size he was. It was pretty hard to tell. It was pretty dark, no moonlight. So we're gonna dive back in this morning and see what comes back across us. Anything for you last night, Dan?
None.
Quiet. But I saw 2 different deer, and I think I had a third for sure that I heard moving. So I'm gonna go back to where I was sitting, and I think Dan may take the next bench above me. We'll see where he ends up, but we'll dive in and hopefully can maybe make a kill this morning.
We hunted this property yesterday evening. Eric sat down on a bench down here about 100 yards from me, and I sat way in the back. And Eric saw 2 deer come out of what we perceive as bedding behind us, going towards standing corn. That's about a half mile up there. And so this morning we came back. Eric left his stand, went to his stand where he was yesterday, and I went up to the bench above him and got into a position in pitch blackness where I could see this whole bench. If one comes through this way, we should see it this morning. So nothing happened this morning, but yesterday the deer came out of what we expected to be bedding, but we ran into another trail camera down here this morning, and I ran into one over there. We ran into a bunch of ground blinds down there, and last year when I was in here, there was nobody in here. I think that maybe, there's bright eyes all over the place too. I think maybe that when we did the public land challenge here, attracted some people to this spot because people always recognize the spots.
Right.
But I noticed on the map that there's a thermal hub over on this end,
Okay.
and when it got daylight, it looked like I'm not really good on the trails, but I came in here and kind of pitch black. But I just wanted to get into an area where we could cover this whole area coming in and out of that bedding, and nothing moved through here. I walked up to the top and looked over the top to see into the thermal hub, and I noticed a gigantic rub off of an obviously mature buck up here. It seems to be coming out of that thermal hub.
Oh.
I think we should probably look at that end of the corn and then look at the
And then
top
kinda
of the thermal hub
backtrack.
and just see if there's something in there to set up on.
Right.
Because it's a good spot where the deer could go if there's pressure down here.
Sure.
Especially something mature.
Yep. This is definitely the easy access
Yeah,
side.
there's been people down here like
Yep.
crazy. There's a trail cam over there, trail cam over there, all those ground blinds where the rubs are and stuff.
Right.
I think it's easy to assume that a deer could be holding up on this side if there's enough cover. So we should check that out.
Yeah.
All right, we pushed back a ways and went around the thermal hub. We saw this thick area here, this like saddle coming out of the back of the thermal hub. And we were thinking, oh wow, that looks good and thick. And I said, look at the historical rubs, and then I looked down. And there's some really big fresh ones. That buck is definitely coming out of there. Now I'm sure, convinced. We gotta be careful, this might even be a setup.
Right.
There's always this element and balance of pushing it too far. Because we only got a couple days. You sit back a little bit, it's slapping that thing on the butt, telling him you're coming. And he already knows we're in this woods, but he thinks we're not over here. But we gotta make sure we're in the right spots the first time. So we gotta push the limits. I mean, if we kick them out, we kick them out.
Right.
But if you don't push that envelope, we ain't getting that deer. So we're gonna try and sneak in as close as we can, find some setups without spooking them. I think this is the right route to completely circle this area. I don't think most people would have did that. We walked a long ways around this stuff to get over here. So now we're going to ease through that stuff and back up to those rubs and that draw. There's a good chance we could spook that deer out of there. I would say probably like a 15% chance.
It's risk reward, right?
Right. But we don't spook them out of there. We find the right spots. You get your buck.
I think it's well worth it.
So we just completely circled the thick area up top. We found no fresh sign. We keep creeping up this ridge. The rubbish should be right above us, and we got to about the point where we think that buck is coming out of this draw here. And we kicked up a lone doe. That might be his doe. I hate to kick her out of here, but she didn't really run hard. She just trotted down to the bottom. Here's your bed, right here. And these rubs are right up here in the pine. Somewhere's right 50 yards from the center here. We're about to walk into them. So I'm thinking the guy setting up where the doe was and the guy setting up there might be not a bad idea. Like getting into a tree like this one back here that's got a little cover. And we'll be able to hit where we walked. I don't think this is a bad spot because the doe was right here. And then we'll have one guy set up in the rub. So we'll look, there might be a better spot even closer. But just hit it. We either get them or we don't, right?
Yep.
I hate that we kicked that doe out of here though. But in hindsight, where she was, she probably saw us set up.
Yeah, when we first came in, we had talked about one guy sitting up high here and one guy coming in here anyway, so we may have kicked her anyway, we just don't know.
She might run right back up here though.
Yeah,
They're more afraid of us than they are, or more afraid of the buck than they are us.
Yeah, she didn't seem too spooked. It was a slow trot off. She's not going far.
So that doe bed is right there behind Eric, 10 feet. Look at this historical rub from the past. This is a couple years old. Look at this tree. That's crazy.
That's
It's probably 2 years old.
Oh.
That's a huge rub.
another elk coming through here. Looks like that next one is a little shredded on the backside too.
So that rub line comes out right here, and we're looking at exactly what tree to sit in. And we looked down here and we saw a tree stand. And your first inclination is that, like, oh, somebody else is already here. But I'm always the detective and I look close. And I don't want to walk down there because the thermal drop will go right down to where the deer is. But if you look at the platform, I don't know if you can see that. It is covered with leaves, so nobody's been in that stand for a while. That stand might be abandoned. So I'm not too worried about that stand. Do you see that? The leaves are covered in the platform?
Yep.
I mean, they're like 4 inches thick, so nobody's been in that stand. At least not for a while. Probably not this year.
Yeah.
Eric just let me off at the bridge there. You see all the flags in here? This place is getting a lot of pressure. There's a trail going back here. Here's a flag. And then just up ahead here, there's a couple ground blinds. And there's bright eyes on all the trees. So there's a lot of pressure here near the road. But what we're getting, pressure kind of dies down way back in there. But we got to climb some really steep hills and go through some water to get over there. So it's keeping your average guy out of there. I take it that must have been in the guy's way. There's his ground blind. I think he's hunting this trail right here that walks 2 feet in front of him. I don't know what else he'd be hunting here. There's no trails coming off of the hill. Trails are going vertical. And the road is right there, less than 100 yards. I don't know, bubble gum wrappers. Maybe it's a kid. And another trail camera. Look at that. There's a lot of trail cameras on this property. That's number 3. So there's another one of these real big rubs with real high tine marks. There's a big rub down there and a big rub down there. And they're on trails coming over. And actually, where Eric was sitting was right here. So I do believe that the deer are coming from that draw. Interesting. So it makes this sit tonight be a little more interesting. Because we spooked him over here. He had 2 bucks come from over there. Both spooked. So I think they're going to have more of a tendency to go up by where those does are. We'll see what happens. It's a big rub though. Well, you can see some scarring up here from last year. Interesting. That tree looks like it's hit there too. Yeah, just a little bit, but there's tine marks in it. Obviously a direction of coming from the top. And that's right where Eric was sitting. Right up here. Very interesting. He didn't see any of that. Well, this is my tree. The wind is blowing that way. The thermals I'm hoping will pull down there. And the deer is coming from that way. You can see the really big rubs coming up the hill here. And you can see the historical ones on all the trees. There's even a historical one on the tree behind me from last year. That doe was bedded right down there, right in the saddle. She just took a couple hops down, so I'm hoping that she doesn't leave the area. But he's coming up here working this. You see where he's working over the top, but then I think he got spooked from Eric over there. So I'm hoping he stays on this routine now. Who knows? But it's a good open shooting. I think from up there it looks like I can get an arrow right down to those rubs. He won't be able to get me on this wind. If the thermal's pulling, he won't get me. But man, there's some swirling right in this spot. This is a huge hole here. It's a thermal hub. That buck is in here because he can bet on any one of these points on any wind. So I'm sure he's just living there. It's just a matter of getting him where he comes out. I hope that's not the direction the big buck's coming from, because he might come out right underneath me.
Alright. I'm all set up for the evening. About 20 yards away from me, we have this really fresh rub that probably happened this morning. The thing is just glowing orange. Shavings all over the bottom of the tree, all on top of the freshly fallen leaves. So you can tell how fresh that is. I have a really good buck trail that wraps around me here. And it drops down into this swampy area. This morning, when we were in here, we thought we had a deer jump up in that thick cover down there. We don't know for certain that it was a deer, but it's absolutely possible. From the ground, I wasn't able to tell where this buck trail kind of dropped off into the swamp area. Now that I'm sitting up in the stand, I notice a little dry peninsula that drops off into the swamp up here. So I can see deer funneling into that point, coming onto this higher ground, and moving on the doe bedding back here, and some corn. That buck came from the exact opposite way of what I was expecting. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, there is some really, really thick stuff behind me across the road. I've noticed a number of different vehicles driving down that road already, but I think we're really in them here. You have to love public land. The way I had set up, I'm facing a ridge straight out ahead of me, right where that little fork buck went into. Right out this way. And
what I thought was a large deer coming through the woods with a large rack, like it was catching a bunch of brush. And it was making noise for some time. I did about an hour and a half ago have a truck pull up on the road behind me, and I could hear some walking in to my left, and then I couldn't hear it anymore. It sounded like the guy went in maybe 200 yards or so. But now what it looks like is that it ended up being two guys that came out of the brush. But it looks to me like they did a big loop around this. So it's down to the last hour here. And I guess I'm just going to sit tight, but my confidence is completely gone.
So, what we had discussed when we went up there was there was a little chance they were from behind me, up in that thick stuff. Remember the thick stuff we circled completely before we went through there? About an hour before dark, a buck came out of that thick stuff behind me and walked right past me. And I heard it just as it was getting behind me, and I looked and I saw it coming, and it walked perfect, considering my wind was blowing down the wrong way.
Sure.
And it was just a fork, but it came in an hour before dark. It hit our scent trail and just freaked. It didn't like the first trail where I walked into today, but then it just kept walking, and then it hit the trail where we walked together, and it just froze for a while. Then it turned around and kind of stiff walked back where it came, and then when it got out of sight, it trotted back into the thick.
Okay.
But the whole night, I heard something behind me down in the thick, and when I was in the tree looking, you could see the rubs were in a perfect line, and they actually went straight underneath that tree.
Okay.
But I had to sit in that tree because it was the only tree that had shoot and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But they'd be coming straight on if they gave them the hole, or straight behind with no shot until they went under me
Right.
from behind. But I didn't think they were going to come from behind. We discussed 90% in front, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So the whole rest of the night was uneventful, except for every now and then, I swear I hear a deer behind me. I thought I heard grunts twice, but I wasn't sure if it was in my head.
Mm-hmm. So you were getting buck fever like me the other night. A
No,
little.
I wasn't
Possibly.
buck fever.
Possibly.
I just heard sounds that sounded like I think that was a grunt.
Okay.
Okay, and I did hear some crashing. I'm not like you. I don't get buck fever.
Jeez.
So anyway, finally it got to be closing time, and I started pulling my stuff. I pulled my stand, put it on my back. You know, I assemble my stand, put it on my back as I'm climbing down. I pulled my first stick, and I figured I'm not coming back, and just threw it down. And when it hit the ground, all hell busted loose. And I looked over and I just saw a big rack running away through that brush. He was coming up underneath me from behind.
Really?
Yeah, I couldn't see him real well because it was low light, but it was pretty lit up at closing time. I got a good look at him that it was definitely a shooter buck, and definitely the one that was laying those rubs down. So
Wow. Okay. Okay. So behind you would have been that small little ravine right behind you.
no, he came from the cornfield way out of that thick brush on top of that ridge,
Okay. Okay.
but right behind the tree.
Okay. I see.
You know what I mean? Down into that tangle a little bit. It was a little thicker there when the little buck came up higher.
Okay.
He
Okay.
came up into open woods,
Sure.
but from the same area.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of interesting. He was coming in looking for that doe, but you know, I thought it was strange he came out so late if he was bedded in there, because we circled that. He had to be in there, which means he had to be within 75, 100 yards of that tree. Wouldn't you say? We circled that whole freaking thing.
Yeah, we walked all the way
And there was
around
nothing
that.
coming out any other direction.
Right.
So he had to be 75, 100 yards from me. I think because we circled it, at one point or another, he got our wind.
Mm-hmm.
At a time or two other, he might have heard us walking.
Sure.
So then when I snuck in, thinking he's down in the ravine, then he probably waited till it was all clear we were gone. Now we're going to sneak out of there. Where if we would have just found those rubs, backed out, came in and hunted it,
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing would have walked out an hour before dark. This is the spot we hunted the first day. We walked around the ridges in here where there's a trail. There were a lot of rubs coming out up here and some coming out over there. But it seemed to me that they're all coming out of this little bowl here at the head of a creek. Now I wanted to see if they're running this creek or whatever, but I figured they're bedding in here. And I really couldn't get in here in the evening. So we got here 2 hours before daylight, and I came up that creek into pitch blackness and just kept nudging forward till I found something. It took me 2 hours to get to this spot in gray light. I've got a very old logging road underneath me that's got some deer sign on it. I could just barely see some with my flashlight. And it's a little bit open where deer could walk to get around this canal. I'm going to start here, see what happens. See if we see anything or hear anything come through here. And go from there.
So Dan and I just got onto this piece of property. It looks like a really nice property with a lot of thermal hubs. We decided to come out here and check it out. And we're working our way down this logging road. And Dan had noticed a running track from a doe, and he said, I'll bet you something was chasing it. And we kept working our way down this logging road, and sure enough, something was right behind it. Look at the size of this track.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a 4-finger track.
So there's something in here. Now, I mean, that's pretty fresh. That's like...
Yeah, I've actually got some experience with this spot. I know some good spots in here, but I never checked this exact area out. And I think there's some stuff hanging, like the doe's hanging these this thick clear cuts.
Yep.
And I'm noticing there's an awful lot of acorns on the ground.
Looks like a lot of nice browse in here.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. There's something good running right in here. Well, obviously there is.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a smaller track in there. This smaller buck. I don't think he's the one that did all this. This tree's been hit here. He didn't get through to the flesh, but you see some marks cut into here from tines hitting and stuff, you know. But then what I do notice is one thing is we're on a ridge that runs like this. And this is how people access. And there's this little finger that goes off that way. And that finger, last year I found that that's where the does were bedding and the bucks were bedding. That's where I hunted on the public land challenge. And I found a sign coming through here, but by the time I figured that out, I'd kind of ruined the area. Mm-hmm. So now we're going in there to check it in a proper way so we don't screw it up. And from the scrape here with the big rub, I see a huge rub over here. And it's right in line going into that. It'll drop down that valley and go right up to where those does were bedding and the bucks were hanging with them. So look at this rub here. That's a pretty good one here, hey?
Yeah. That looks real good and real fresh.
Yeah, I hope that that scrape and stuff is opened up over there. I'm feeling good about this. All right. We came to this property at about 1 o'clock. I just got set up now and it's after 5. Crazy. I keep getting breezes the wrong way too. Just nuts. But Josh has been trying to get me to check out some of his areas all week, and I finally came out to this one. Me and Eric went to the back of the property, and Josh had suggested I go up there. It was quite the walk in there. And coming in here, I ran into somebody who recognized me from the videos, from Vermont. And he was still hunting with his bow, and he was leaving. He told me he went in over there, and still hunted his way back. And he said there was a whole bunch of scrapes in this bottom. And I went over to where I was going to go, and there wasn't very much sign. One scrape, hardly any tracks. The scrape was a couple days old. I just didn't like it. So I was thinking they could only come from one way too, because that guy had walked through this whole valley and he saw all kinds of sign. So I thought, well, maybe it's coming from the other side of the thick. So I walked to the other side of the thick and there was a scrape line there, and I followed it the other way, and it kind of dead-ended and went into open areas. And it looked to me like that deer was traveling this way. So considering that guy never jumped nothing or seen anything, I thought there's a good chance it's coming from further back, where he quit going this way. So where he quit, I went to, and it took me a long time to walk all the way back over here. And I went forward here, and I found what I think is a staging area to cross the human trail, where me and that guy met. And there's a huge scrape here and several rubs, and one of the rubs is on a cedar tree that's bigger around in my waist, and it is just shredded. It's got to be a good buck. Got to be. So the trail seems to come out of that thick and go through here. That cedar tree there, probably can't see it from here, it's a long ways away. That is just ripped up. And there's a scrape right there. There's a cedar tree there that was rubbed in the past. It's been killed. And there's scarring on a lot of these trees. Looks like there is some possibility some of the trails go like this, but I have shooting at that too. Comes down like this. The wind is going like this right now, but I keep getting drifts over here. And I mean, when you're down in a valley like this, it's what you get. I hope we get something steady with thermals as the evening comes in. I mean, we only got, an hour and a half, 2 hours of daylight left, but I'm hoping as the sun goes down that the thermals go down into the creek bed. I don't know. I know there's a good one coming through here. Let's see if he shows. I get asked a lot if I bring a pee bottle with me and what to do when you gotta pee. Pee bottle? What, waste good squirrel ammo?
Today is November 3rd. I ended up going back on one of Josh's spots. And Josh had a camera set up on this ridge system way back on some public land. Actually, to be exact, it's 2.5 miles to the spot. I tracked it on Onyx. It'd be a heck of a pull, or a heck of a drag, to get that thing out of here. If I shoot something, so. Josh's camera is set up right on top of this ridge system here. And this morning, there was a really nice 10 just before noon. Right now it's a little after 5 o'clock already. Shooting light is about 7. So, but a really nice 10 showed up here. It was tempting to set up right over the camera. Seeing that the buck was right there was a little licking branch that Josh had a picture of him licking, but there was not a scrape underneath it. He also had some pictures of some does using the same licking branch. So I was tempted to just set up right on the ridge and hope that thing came in. But I decided to make the right call. I walked back on the ridge and I started dropping down the ridge on the leeward side of the hill until I could find a trail that those bucks might be cruising. And I did find that trail that drops off right off of the ridge top, right at that licking branch.
When we were going in to hunt, we ran into this dude coming out, and he recognized us, started talking to us and stuff, and he had said that he went down this next point over, dropped in off the end of it, and still hunted his way back to the trail. And that while he was coming through that river bottom, he says it was one scrape after another, but he never saw nothing, never kicked anything up. And I was going to go up 2 points and drop off the end and go down in and sit on the edge of that river bottom. Now the river bottom was just a tangle of nasty stuff, and looked like it would hold a lot of does or something, and there'd be buck travel on the sides. When I got down there, all I found was one scrape, and I looked around and I thought it looked like it was used once, small scrape. You really couldn't make out that well of trails or anything, so I thought I'm gonna look a little further. So I followed that edge of that thick, nasty river bottom, the opposite direction of where that dude was, because I knew that dude was to the left and he was through a lot of the stuff. So I followed it the other way, and I kept looking and looking, and all I found was one rub about the size of my finger in diameter. And then I got up to the land border. So that was quite a walk. So then what do I do now? So I started thinking about it, and it just kept getting into my head, that guy talking about all those scrapes in there, and I'm like, there's got to be a buck running this, looking for the does. But I'm not seeing any sign over here, so I'm thinking it's probably on the other side of this river bottom, because I'm thinking that buck ain't running in the river bottom. So I drop through that nasty stuff, come out the other side where this, semi-dry creek is, come up the other side, and I'm looking for a trail coming out of the hills, and there is one, but I'm looking up there and it's kind of open hills, and I'm like, I don't think a self-respecting buck is bedding up in those hills. Maybe he's heading that way, So I start looking the other way, and I start following this trail back, And I don't get too far, and I find a scrape about the size of my hood. So I'm like, big tracks in it, and I'm like, okay, he's coming through here, you know. So I keep following the trail, and I find the occasional rub and scrape and stuff, and pretty soon I get into the area where I know that guy was.
Okay.
And I started thinking, you know what? This buck wasn't in where that guy was. He didn't kick nothing up. I know this buck came from a distance, and that guy followed those rubs all the way back to the trail we had came in on.
Mm-hmm.
So I started thinking, that buck's got to be coming from beyond that trail.
Did you look at the map? What did the terrain look like? Or did you kind of assume?
I looked at the map, and what I saw was beyond that trail, that thick stuff started getting narrow, and then it went up into crow's feet of drainages coming out.
Okay.
And I thought, and then up into the hills. And I thought, well, that buck's got to be bedding in one of those drainages, coming down, and he has to go through that narrow point.
Kind of like a pinch point.
Yeah, and then then he can spread out here and do all this rubbing and scraping that he's been doing.
Sure.
And the rubs were pretty big, and the tracks were pretty big. So the rubs and scrapes got heavier and heavier as I got closer to the trail that we went in on.
Okay.
And then I crossed our trail, and it kind of stopped for a while, and I got about 100 yards from our trail, and hit a little natural opening at that tight spot. And it was kind of odd because it was like the only natural opening that was big enough where you could hit everything with a bow. And I was right in the bottom of those ravines.
Okay.
And then I look over and I see this rub that's just glowing. It's the size of my waist
Really?
and high, like high like my waist.
Okay.
And I look and I see a big scrape, a huge scrape, a couple other big rubs, and the trail's coming out of the ravines like I thought. And I'm thinking, well, why would all this sign be in one spot here like this? And it kind of made sense that a buck would come in there and he'd stop and kind of hole up and stage before he'd cross that human trail.
Right.
Because that was the access for everybody that goes into that property. So I'm thinking, he's definitely coming from this way. So you get one crack at that, because that guy walked all the scrapes and stuff. I walked all the scrapes and stuff.
Right.
So I set up, and the buck never showed. So, but the thing is, you got to be on good setups like that day after day after day to kill big bucks.
Sure.
Because that buck ain't going to do that every day. You hunt it one day and he doesn't show up. He might be on a doe. He might have found a hot doe someplace. He might have moved on. But I was in the game. I mean, that was definitely...
All in all, it sounds like you had a really good crack at him.
Yeah, it was just...
I mean, it sounds like you found a great setup.
Even when you got a really great setup, it's still like, maybe 1 of 5, 1 of 6 that he shows up.
That's for certain. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
But you found the sign that you needed to find,
Yeah. You got to
So
do that day
that's
after day
it's-
to get success.
Right.
I'm not really hunting deer. I'm hunting big bucks. I might shoot something that ain't a mature buck. Maybe, shoot something that's like 140 class or something. But really, my goal is to hunt giants. So I don't set up like everybody else does. So I don't see the numbers of deer everybody else does.
Right.
I'm setting up for that big buck, and you roll the dice like that, and sometimes you don't get a deer.